Okay, hi everyone, back again, looking at orienting to place, place-based pedagogies tied directly to a sense of bioregionalism that we've talked about. I want to take just a few minutes to set up for you this whole notion of place-based learning and connecting to our communities. Oftentimes, what happens in education, it can become decontextualized. In other words, place is merely an abstract concept. We learn about places, we learn about things through textbooks. We're starting to move away from that. I think we can see the error of our ways in doing that, but we have a long way to go to really find ways to connect schools and education, be it K to 12, higher education, to the place just outside those windows. Too often schools exist in isolation. They may even be physically isolated on rather impoverished school lots in neighborhoods, whereas using the envelope of the school, connecting the school, breaking down those walls metaphorically, and connecting to the community has great power and impact to transform education as we know it. So these pedagogies, while this is not a new idea, it goes back to progressive education and John Dewey at the turn of the 20th century. For a long time, we've lost that sense of what it means to really shape young children's and young people's experiences of education through a very real connection with where they come from. It could be a rural setting, could be in a lush rolling farming area, or it could be in a downtown inner city urban environment. There are amazing opportunities to learn outside the classroom walls, irrespective of where the school actually exists. So, in his recent book called "In the Presence of Fear," Wendell Berry describes disconnections that are now familiar to many of us. I'd like to take a minute just to look at this quote, to really sit with the words. He says, "We are involved now in a profound failure of imagination. Most of us cannot imagine the wheat beyond the bread, or the farmer beyond the wheat, or the farm beyond the farmer, or the history beyond the farm. Most people cannot imagine the forest and the forest economy that produce their homes, furniture, and paper, the landscapes, the streams, the weather that fill their pitchers and bathtubs and swimming pools with water. Most people appear to assume that when they have paid their money for these things, they have entirely met their obligations." So I'd like to pick up on Wendell Berry's phrase, failure of imagination. The way forward to a saner, sustainable existence is to begin with the fundamental reimagining of the ethical, economic, political, and spiritual foundation on which our culture is based. Now, schools can play a role in this process of reimagining, reimagination, but most often they do not. In fact, critics charge that schools are part of the problem by educating children and young people to be, in David Orr's words, mobile, rootless, autistic toward their places. Schools have a significant role which begins close to home. Students and teachers look at how events and processes close to home relate to regional, national, and global forces and events. And this leads to greater ecological literacy and community engagement. The Orion Society is calling for what they term as a new localism. And that means a local global dialogue that is sensitive to broader ecological and social relationships, as it strengthens people's connections to community and the larger living landscape. So place-based approaches and a pedagogical orientation can be characterized as the pedagogy of community and the re-inhabiting of the home ground and the revitalizing of essential connections between a person and her place. So place-based education really challenges the larger purposes of education and schooling by asking what seem to be fairly simple questions. Where am I? What is the nature of this place? What sustains this community? With what other, both human and non-human, do I share my place? So place-based learning focuses on reimagining or restoring our place and asking students and teachers to respond creatively to these stories, the stories of their home place, so they can position themselves imaginatively and actually within that continuum of nature and place, so they're a part of the community rather than simply a passive observer of it. So really, in a sense, place-based pedagogies situates human beings, situates children, situates teachers within the community, the biotic community, the culture community, the human community. And all of those rich intersections form learning opportunities that connect us more deeply in a spirit of attunement to where we live, who we're living with, and where we are.